one thing I'd like to see happen in our state is, we're going to have our fundamental disagreements. You got to have, I saw the president was saying that he was upset that he thought the Republican Party was weakened because he thinks the country is better served by a two-party system. I happen to agree with that. And what does a two-party system mean? It means philosophical differences. There are stark differences between Republicans and Democrats on many major issues. And that's fine. That's good. That's good for public debate. It just can't translate into vitriol and hatred and anger. But aside from some of these fundamental views of the economy, which is really critical for us, there are many issues upon which we can agree. And the notion that you happen to be a member of one party and therefore you don't get a big voice is not acceptable. And we have to listen to one another. And I want to see that happen in this state over the remaining time that I'm in public office. So I think we've taken a big step forward here. And we are pro-job, but we're pro-environment. And they are not inconsistent in America if you just use a little common sense and make some good decisions. Now, we have the superintendent here, who I think was afraid to come in and see me when I arrived, and we have the school board here. And I want to, who else do we have? Principals here. So I want to talk to you about three things. Hopefully I'll remember all three. I don't want to have an oops moment. The first one is start talking. Now, I know that you are a start talking school. Our drug problem across this country is devastating our country, our families, our communities. Now, there's only, and our Start Talking gives you a curriculum for the principals that are here, including the elementary school principal. Let me tell you how I would have a teacher do it. Okay, I would have a teacher walk in. You need like big curriculum. Walk in and say, boys and girls, drugs are really terrible. If you get addicted to them, you could end up in the hospital. People that get addicted to them sometimes die. Don't do drugs. Okay, now pick up your books and let's get to spelling. That's all it takes. It doesn't take some curriculum or some PhD to warn children to stay away from drugs. So in the middle school, I'm a teacher. What do I say? Okay, well, before we get to math today, let me tell you about how serious this drug situation is. Do not take pills. Do not take drugs. If you take them, it can kill you, and it can keep you from being what you want to be. Do you understand, girls and boys? And they can do that like twice a week. You don't need a curriculum. Just don't do drugs. So 50% less chance that they will do drugs. Now you're in the high school, okay? Students, before we take our algebra test, I just want to spend a second here talking about drugs. And I just want to tell you, I just read a story about a guy that just died of an overdose. Don't do drugs because you don't want to die. And you all have hopes and dreams. Don't destroy them by doing something stupid. End of it. That's the end of it. And if we do that across our state, Superintendent, if we do that in every school with every teacher across this state, we will significantly win the battle and we will save lives. And for the life of me, I don't understand why communities don't take it seriously. Because I find that we're not. And if you're in the Lions Club, if you're in the Chamber of Commerce, I don't care what it is, these organizations around our communities need to take this as a priority. So what do? I'll tell you what I do, to the chagrin of my wife. I walk into a restaurant, I see a couple kids, I say, hey kids, let me tell you something, you stay away from the drugs. I don't know who these kids are. Just take it on before we melt to the ground with overdose death of our best and brightest. Now, that's one thing. School board, please. And I want you, superintendent, you need to talk to all these superintendents. You need to tell, we're talking about saving kids' lives, people's lives. Now, number two, we have a program called Community Connectors. You go out and you get Bob Sebo's a businessman, okay? You get Sebo here, or you get Dave Johnson, and he works with value-based, faith-based, church, synagogue, doesn't matter, have a partner, and they adopt your school. We will give you $3 for every dollar that is invested. You're not going to run the program, they're going to run the program, but you need to work with them. And what do? We train the mentors. And the mentors go into the school and they sit in the classroom and they come in and they tell kids, you know what you can be? Do you know what it would be? Now Bob Sebo here, I don't know if you know this, he goes into some of these schools and he yanks these kids out who are failing and could drop out, and he takes them in his big fancy $500,000 car. He gives them a ride, their mouths are hanging open. And then he takes them to the old house where he used to live. And you could take 10 of those houses to fit into his new house. You ever take them to the new house? You need to do that. Take them to the old to the new. I'm going to get you to be a salesman. But what he's doing is he's changing lives. He's changing lives because he's grabbing kids and encouraging them. Now, we have a tendency to think that the only kids that need encouragement are those who are downtrodden and poor. But I want to tell you that every kid needs it. Every kid needs to hear about what their potential is. We of course don't want to ignore the downtrodden because we don't want them to drop out and we want them to talk about their glorious future. But we also want to talk to kids at the top who might someday have a discovery and cure cancer. I don't know. This program is available to you, and frankly in Columbiana County it's being used here, but it's like free money for a while. And then once you get it for the first year, we expect you to raise it yourself and fund it yourself. You don't have to fund that much. Just get in the schools and help people. What we know is in the Cincinnati schools, they have a collaborative down there. Their graduation rate, I believe, is 63%, and where they mentor kids 1 hour a week for a year, the graduation rate is 97%. It works. So why don't we do that? And then why don't you spread the word, if you would, Doctor, to all the different friends you have in this, because the schools are important. And I know the schools have got a zillion things they're trying to do. But I think these two things are really important. Finally, on the way up here, sometimes I think education gets in the way of learning. Let me repeat that. Education gets in the way of learning. We are undergoing massive structural changes in our economy. And it's even going to occur faster. You talk to people who, like, I know the guy that created the autonomous car for Google. I know the guy that created the Google glasses. I know the guy working on the flying car, okay? There is going to be significant changes in our workforce because of artificial intelligence, because of the development of the autonomous car, and that's just the beginning. Now, we have a workforce that at times is not flexible enough to know how to, one, have resilience, number two, know how to adapt to a new environment, and when that doesn't happen, then people find themselves out of work, they find themselves in poverty, and then what happens? Nothing good, including a problem of substance abuse when they lose hope. I was just reading today on the way up here in the airplane. I never get to read enough. But these Catholic schools, they started in Cincinnati. What's it called?
Cristo Rey.
Cristo Rey. They have a program that says that if you come to Cristo Rey, we will give you 5 days a month to work in a professional occupation. 5 days a month. Now my daughters, when I'm running for president, sometimes they had to travel with me. And I'd call the principal. He always loved it when I called him. But I called the principal. And I said, now, you know, the girls are going to miss some school. He said, well, let me tell you, John, we can never let education get in the way of learning. We are too held back by rules and regulations and structures, and I am willing to partner with anybody that wants to come up with a unique program to put flexibility into the school system. See, I'm really pretty well convinced that we are still running schools like we did 100 years ago. Now you tell me what works well that worked 100 years ago. You know, maybe something you drink, but that's about it. Because here in this century, everything is changing at the speed of light. and education and government has to change at the speed of light, or we're going to lose a chunk of our population to frustration, poverty, and unemployment, because the change is not going away. But we can retrain people for the jobs of today and the jobs of tomorrow if we can give our people the tools to understand flexibility, resilience, and how to get yourself a better life tomorrow based on the change that's happening in our society. So I'm willing to work with you, Superintendent, on any imaginative or creative program that you can come up with. We'll work with the union, and I know we're in Columbiana County, but I cannot tell you how thrilled I am of what's happening in the Valley, and most particularly in Youngstown. With Jim Tressel at Youngstown State, we're building a better, stronger board, and I am absolutely thrilled about what's happening in the Youngstown City Schools. We now have brought someone in to run those schools who has incredible experience in turning schools around in the inner city of Chicago. It's great, but you're ahead of that game. Let's think about change, innovation, creativity. It's up to you and this school board. And I know you got all these rules and all these, just tell us what you want to do. Tell us what you want to do and we're all ears. And so, a lot of subjects to cover today, but I didn't want to come all the way here and not preach for at least a little while.